Excellent. Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all today on our accelerator call for April. We're finally in April, yay. If you don't mind, just go into the chat real quick and let us know what state you're calling from so we know where you're all coming from. And if this is your first time on an accelerator call, we've been having these calls since early 2020, the beginning of the pandemic, just put a number 1 in the chat so we know how many people are coming in from for the first time. Would love to know that. I'm gonna just make my chat a little bit bigger. Oh, we have lots of newbies. Well, welcome. Just to give you some background, we started the accelerator group in early 2020. There was a group of people who were all laid off due to the beginning of COVID. And we decided that we needed a community. And this became our community. We used to have weekly calls. And I was a designated career coach on all those calls. We helped so many people get back on track and get great jobs from those accelerator calls. And I've also made some of my dearest friends through those calls who are now all working, and they send people to join us on a monthly basis now. So we are thrilled to have you here to join our group. If you're not yet a member of our private LinkedIn group, you will see great job postings on a daily basis, wonderful resources. Just today, I reposted Virginia Franco's post from yesterday, which had some great information in it, into our accelerator room. So if you'd like to join, Lori's going to put the link to our groups, which she did already. Thank you. If you'd like to join, that would be amazing. And I encourage you to put in your own LinkedIn URL into the chat. You never know who's going to be on this call who might be looking for exactly what you're doing. So I'd like you to put your URL, your LinkedIn URL, and the type of job that you're looking for. That would be amazing. And that way we can network virtually. And that's how this works. Networking is an amazing opportunity for us to meet and talk to people that we wouldn't get to see. You know, I wouldn't generally see this many people from this many states in 1 hour in a day. So it's the beauty of being virtual. My LinkedIn URL will be in there as well. And if you're not connected with me, feel free to connect with me. Absolutely. Just so you know, we have had many requests to view recordings of past accelerator calls. And so we now have a YouTube channel where this video will be posted as well. Just in case someone couldn't attend, we want you to have the benefit of hearing our speakers. We've had some amazing speakers from social media marketers and recruiters and LinkedIn specialists. They're all amazing. And today we are honored to have Virginia Franco with us, who's also amazing and has so much information to share with us. We are thrilled. I want to make you aware that next month, May 3rd, is our next call. And we're going to be speaking with Melissa Miller, who is the head of HR for ETS Wound Care. If you've ever wondered what HR thinks about you when they're interviewing you, you don't want to miss this event. So she is ready to be grilled, and you can ask her anything you want. Like, I have the perfect resume, and I am the perfect fit for that job. Why did I not get called? Those are the kinds of questions that I expect that she will get from our group, and that's on May 3rd. There's a link in our chat right now if you want to register, so you don't get closed out, and we'd love to have you there. One thing I just want to mention before we get started with Virginia is that we like to share our knowledge with others. And since not everyone can be on this call, we're going to ask you to put nuggets into the chat when you hear something amazing. So anything that you hear that either Virginia or I say, or any one of your colleagues that's on our group here, you're all welcome to join in. Anything that you hear that you think might be valuable for others, please put it in the chat. And then I will take all of those and make a post probably tomorrow or the next day, we'll see, so that everyone can see what they missed. Okay, fair enough. Everyone ready? All right. So I would like to introduce Miss Virginia Franco, who is a past president of the National Resume Writers Association. That's amazing, right, Virginia? You don't get to speak to a past president of the Resume Writers Association that frequently. She's also the host of Resume Storyteller podcast, and she shares job search information in magazines like Forbes and Career Sidekick and JobScan, just to name a few. Has offered to answer any questions you have about resume or LinkedIn writing in 2023. And since this is such an amazing opportunity, I'm going to ask you to please put into the chat in caps if you have a question so that we can call on you. And Virginia will try and answer as many questions as she can. I'm going to start the call off because I know some people get a little shy in the beginning. And so I'm going to start with some questions that have come in already from some of your colleagues who perhaps could not join us. So I'm going to get started. Virginia, would you like to introduce yourself and add anything that I missed? And then we can get started.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. So nice to meet all of you. Just a little bit about myself. I have been writing resumes since the dawn of day, it seems. When I got out of college back in the 20th century, I didn't know that anyone wrote resumes back then. So I did it for free. I didn't know anyone did it for a living, so I did it for free. And I used my degree in journalism to write for companies and magazines and newspapers, just a little bit of everything. And I learned very early on that a lot of the principles that I was taught when it comes to writing for the news and writing web and collateral for companies, all those principles really apply to how people read resumes and LinkedIn profiles. So I launched my business in the recession when I was drowning in kids and needed to figure out a way to make a living without dying in childcare. And I have been writing resumes professionally ever since then.
Amazing. So great. I would like to start with your post from yesterday, Virginia, because I think it was so valuable. There's 3 items that I know I tell my clients all the time about, but I would love it if you could share your insight. And those 3 were the resume builder, the market value titles, and the LinkedIn job postings, the skills section,
The skills,
which is huge. So why don't you, just talk a little bit about those 3, because I think everyone needs to know that.
Sure. So everyone taught, I write resumes and LinkedIn profiles. Those are sort of the 2 foundational documents that I feel like people need to get going on their job search. And I am sure you have heard so many things about putting keywords in your resume, making sure that your resume gets past ATS, the applicant tracking software systems, all of that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that. But what I have increasingly seen, as have many others, is that LinkedIn is growing increasingly algorithm driven. And that's just by virtue of having, I think they have like 900 million users now. It's some insane number. And so they need to have ways to help you show up more in search and to, control your feed and all of that. So I have focused largely on writing resumes, focused primarily on humans, but I make sure that applicant tracking software systems can read everything that I write so that they can file it properly. But I really have increased my focus on putting keywords in the right places using the 3 tools that I referenced in my post to help people show up on search. We know that LinkedIn is one of the primary tools that recruiters and hiring managers use to search for people. We know that they use the LinkedIn version that you and I see, but then they also have purchased a LinkedIn, I think it's still called LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a paid subscription. And they search for you using certain terms. So the first tool that I use to make sure, actually, let me back up. People, from what we know about the algorithm on LinkedIn, there are a couple of places where when you put keywords in the right places, the algorithm will weigh it more heavily. Those 3 areas are your headline at the very top. The second area are the job titles that you have. And then the third area is the skill section towards the bottom. That doesn't mean that you don't also weave in keywords into other areas, but when you put them in those 3 locations, I have seen a big impact together with other activities on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, I joke around and call it like a needy partner or needy spouse that wants you to pay attention to it, and it rewards that. So if you are doing things like building connections, responding to instant messages, commenting on people's posts, posting, and you have a full profile, those activities together with the techniques I teach will really help your profile to show up higher on search. So LinkedIn's resume builder is a tool that I have been using for a while. Unfortunately, I haven't found it reliable as a true resume creator. I have found that it's certain sections, it skips altogether, or it just parses them incorrectly. But what I don't like about that tool is that it doesn't allow you to customize your resume based on the opportunity. I am an advocate of adding and removing certain skills in your resume based on the job posting, because as you've seen, a lot of job postings have commonality, but then there's always a couple things that are different. And so if you send them a LinkedIn conversion, you're missing that opportunity. So I recommend tweaking skills. I recommend tweaking the headline to match the job title that you're targeting. I recommend you move bullets around based on the opportunity, making sure that the first one that you put on is what is most impactful for that role as it is relevant to the job posting. But where Resume Builder can be really helpful is in helping you figure out what the important keywords are for that position. And if you want, I can sort of walk you through, I could do a screen share and show people how you can use that tool. Would that be helpful?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
I just add on a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
So
Yes, I think so. We are getting a lot of questions in, just so you know, so we'll do it for a short period of time, Virginia, if that works
Okay.
for you.
yeah.
And
Okay,
then
so very
we'll go on to
quickly,
questions.
let me do screen share real quick. Where's my LinkedIn profile? Here we go. Let me close these out. Can you guys see my LinkedIn screen?
Yes.
Okay, so when I want to access Resume Builder, I'm on my homepage and I click on more, and then I click on Build a Resume. And then I'll click on Create from Profile. And here is where you put in whatever job title you're searching for. So let's say you're targeting VP of Sales. Click on that. And you'll see to the right here, ones that they see in my resume, as well as other ones that you want to make sure that you include. Now, if you don't have the paid version, you only see, it's a handful of these, but with premium, I can see, I don't know, it's like 20 or so. I recommend getting premium for free for 30 days, just if nothing else, just to use this tool. And so what I'll do is I'll come up with a couple of titles that I want to be searched for, and I'll come up with a big giant spreadsheet of a job keywords. I will then sort them and I will put them in those 3 areas that I spoke about. And then I'll make sure that the top 3 that I want to be seen for most appears my top 3 skills on.
I'm sorry, Virginia, could you please repeat what you've done? Where we should push?
I'm sorry, Olga? You're
Oh,
muted, sorry.
Can you repeat your
Okay.
question, please?
Could you please repeat what you have done? What push on resume? Yeah.
Sure, well, and actually I have done screenshots in the article that Mindy posted. But you go
Okay. I'm sorry.
homepage, and you click on resume tool, and then you'll see all of these. The areas where you need to make sure that they show up are, let me go back to my homepage. How do I get to my homepage? Oh my gosh. Okay. I make sure that those keywords, a handful of them, show up here in my job title. I make sure, in my headline, I make sure that they show up in my experience title. So maybe this is my title right here, and then I will put certain keywords. LinkedIn and Resume Writer are mine. I take advantage of LinkedIn's 100 characters in the experience section to add them. And then I also make sure that they show up in this section. And then I make sure that the 3 that I want to be known for most appear at the top. So I know I just chugged through Resume Builder. The other thing that has been really helpful with identifying skills is to go to job postings, because LinkedIn has made it easier than ever to find a job, to find these skills. So let me show you how to do that. I type in my jobs. Yep. So let me look up VP of Sales. Go to this one in West Virginia. And then you'll see literally right at the top, this whole little section is fairly new. You click on it and you literally can see all of the skills that the recruiter who has posted this is searching under. So make sure to weave those into your LinkedIn and then into your resume where applicable.
Virginia, can you go back to that one page for a minute? I just want to add something.
Sure.
Just
Okay.
click on the 8 more. Yeah, perfect. So what you can see here, and by the way, this is relatively new, maybe a couple of months that I've started seeing this. It used to be way down below, but now what they've added is you can go right to the plus sign and you can add that skill right to your profile, which is amazing. It makes it so simple. And then
you only get 50. So I recommend, if you're running over, to really go through that list and prune it so that you can add these.
Exactly. And if you look at a couple that are all within your job title category, let's say you're looking for that VP of Sales job, you're going to see a trend starting. You're going to see lots of business development and business planning, and probably B2B as well. So be very mindful of what's in those job postings, because that is gold, true gold.
It is. It's amazing. And so I do an Excel spreadsheet of a data dump of 100. I'll sort them, eliminate the duplicates, and then order them from there. And then I go about putting them in my documents. The last thing that has grown increasingly important is what is referred to as market value titles. And what those are the titles that LinkedIn offers hiring managers and recruiters to enter in when they're searching for talent like you. So let's say your company has named you, I don't know, chief sales guru or some sort of, account executive, just these titles that the companies tend to do. But you suspect that the role that you're targeting would be a VP of sales, or you want to be found for that. So, or if you're struggling to figure out what that title should be, what I do is I'll go to my experience section and I'll click on add a position. And I'll just start typing in. So I'll type in the word sales, and you can see a bunch of different sales jobs here, different titles. These are all LinkedIn's market value titles. I'll type in VP of sales and you'll see a couple of different ones. So what you do with that is you will take what I do is I will write the market value title at the beginning. Then in parentheses, I might put the name that the company calls it, if it's chief sales guru or whatever. And then with whatever remaining characters I have of the 100 characters, I'll include some of the skills that I identified using the resume builder tool. All right, and let me discard that because I don't want that job. All right, so I know I just went through a bunch. I'm going to stop sharing now and answer questions related to that or otherwise.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Virginia. That was amazing and helpful. And by the way, if you missed any of that, you can go to her post, Virginia's post from yesterday, because that's all listed in there, or you can replay the video when you're ready. So the first question I saw was, it's funny because I saw from Cindy Campbell, there was a question about ChatGPT, which is kind of in line with the A1. So how do you feel about those ChatGPT resumes and resume builder and all those AI things that people are starting to use a lot now?
So I'm a tech geek. I have been on ChatGPT since I heard about it. I even pay for the premium, and I have Google's version, and I have Bing. I have all of them. I have tested it on resumes. I actually was testing it with my husband's last night. I said, write a resume for this position. And then I said, write a resume using this LinkedIn profile for this position. It is a great start, but what I find is that a lot of the nuance gets missed. My issues to date with even the latest ChatGPT is I sort of call it garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know, you have to be really clear on the stories you want to share, the successes you've had, the context behind it, so that you can then go in and edit ChatGPT. I probably spent 2 hours editing what we wrote. I even took the resume I wrote for him and said, use this to write for this totally different job description. And it was, again, it was a decent starting point, but definitely don't use it as your final draft. What people are doing mistakenly right now is they're using it as their final draft. And then I've been hearing from recruiters saying, well, I just literally got the same resume 5 different times. So it's clear that they're using ChatGPT for it. I do think ChatGPT is a great source, again, for a cover letter outlines, thank you letter outlines. If you want to start a strategy of commenting or posting on LinkedIn, it's a great starting point. It has unlocked writer's block for me more times than I care to count. If you want to take something and maybe have a more humorous tint to it, sort of change the tone, it's great for that. But just don't use it as the end all be all right now. Make sure that there's human oversight. But I think it's worth the $20 for it, because I think in a year it's going to go up to much more every month. And it gives you access to the latest version.
I agree. The price will definitely be going up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very inexpensive right now. All right, so
I've been using ChatGPT to talk to famous dead people, asking them their take on job search. It infers from their writing. It's so cool.
It's very, very cool. What's cool is when you watch it actually creating this, whatever
Yeah,
it is they asked them to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Very, very
And
cool.
it's great for interview prep, for getting questions that maybe you didn't think about for a certain role or a certain industry, getting company intel and insights as it curates from everywhere.
Right. Amy Kang had a question, but I believe you covered that, because she said, do you recommend using the job title from the company as it is, or modify it to a more generalized title? So when you say generalized, Amy, I think you're referring to something what Virginia was talking about, that you should be using market value titles. Otherwise, recruiters can't find you. And I've seen so many very, very unusual titles that people have gotten from their companies. And it's very hard sometimes for my clients to let go of those titles and understand that they will not be found on LinkedIn if they keep calling themselves, I don't know, chief bottle washer or something. And, or, you know, like a lot of people have this chief people officer job, and that's really HR. And so you need to use the terms that recruiters are going to be looking for.
Right. So on your resume, I am a fan of trying to tie the job title to closer to what the posting is. But by making the most minor modifications to the headline, you can really impact the reader. So if I say you're an IT manager, that suggests one thing. But if I say you're a financial services IT manager specializing in data privacy, boom, suddenly you're an industry specialist. So by just adding and subtracting things like that, you're setting the stage for the reader as to the kind of role that you're targeting. Because what you don't want is to not include a headline or put one on there that's sort of nebulous. And then the reader goes to what they'll do is they'll go to your job titles on your experience section. And if those don't necessarily align with your target, you've confused the reader.
Mm-hmm. And we don't want to confuse the readers.
No, because they're in a rush. They do not, even our own mothers do not take the time we'd like them to read our resumes.
So I like that. I'm going to put that in as a nugget. Don't confuse the readers, please, because they're spending such a short period of time on you. If they don't get it, they're moving on.
So people read resumes the same way you and I find out about the news. Think about when you want to know what's going on in the world, whether you open up Twitter or a newspaper, we scan headlines. And then if the headline grabs us, we'll read that first couple of lines, which they call the lead paragraph. That's all we look at because we don't have time. So, but those two sections tell you what the story is going to be about and what you want to come back to when you have more time. putting those into the resume and into LinkedIn is helping that same phenomenon to happen.
I love it. I love it. How do you feel about color in resumes, Virginia? I think you're a fan of color, but let's talk about that. There was a question about, does that affect the applicant tracking system?
No, it does not. The only thing that applicant tracking software systems can't read are things that are in text boxes. So graphics count as that. Things in headers and footers in a Microsoft Word document can't be read. But color, shading, bold, underlining, it doesn't recognize that. That is for the human eye, not for ATS. I am not a fan of design for design's sake, but there are places where design elements like some color, like bolding, like shading, can draw the reader where you want them to go. Keep in mind that most people during first rounds of resumes are reading these on some sort of a device. They don't often print out till later on. And when we read online, our eyes bounce around a lot. And so by using color in certain areas, like maybe the name and maybe the experience, like the sections or the job titles, if you want to highlight those, or maybe the company names, if you want to sort of showcase those, that can facilitate an online skim read. The other thing with color is that when used sparingly, it can stand out amongst a sea of people that are writing black and white resumes. And if you've had the privilege of being a hiring manager and had to look at 50 resumes, I'll bet you saw something with a little bit of color and went, whoa, this is different. The caveat with color is that I always keep in mind the industry that I'm targeting. How you write for Wall Street or an accountant is really different than how I might write for a software engineer in Silicon Valley, or a marketing person at a creative agency. In the more creative places, they won't freak out with the color orange. Wall Street or accountants might. So I will stick with more traditional colors like navy, like gray, and I won't go crazy the way maybe I would in a marketing resume.
Right. I agree with you on that for sure. Here's a question that just now came in. Should you change from chronological order if the job that you're applying to refers to something that you did earlier in your history, in your experience?
So the answer is it depends, but here's what I'll say. If there's anything, ideally functional is what people prefer, because as readers, we like to read stories. We like to see beginning, middle, ends. And when you sort of play with the timeline, it can confuse people. So what I always say is I would recommend you try to see if there's details from your more recent roles that you can highlight that are relevant to your target. If you absolutely can't, let's say you're targeting, I don't know, an orthodontist role and you've been a yoga instructor for 20 years. Those two don't overlap. So there's probably not much you could do. Then what I will do is a chronological functional hybrid. So what I'll do is I will group the roles according to your target. So I'll maybe lump the roles that are related to your target in one section and then have the other ones as something else. And I will put those relevant roles at the top and move the other ones to the bottom. But what I always make sure to do though, is I will make sure that the headline speaks to the target. I will make sure that in the summary section that I am referencing that I have this experience. So I'm setting the stage for the reader so that when they see the experience, they'll sort of understand what's going on.
That leads me to, go ahead.
I always encourage people to reflect on their non-relevant roles, to look at it and go, what about this role will make me a stronger candidate for this new role? Because there's always takeaways that you can pull out, and make sure to reference those. So you're sort of tying your career together that way.
So I'm going to connect the dots for people, because we've gotten a lot of questions about pivoting. When you're pivoting from one industry to another, what techniques do you use to help people understand that you could do this job?
Look, with pivoting, unfortunately, applying online is not your friend, because recruiters are who post postings are looking, they're hired to find the closest match, and it's hard to compete against someone who's been in that role and been in that industry. But the people that I see have great career success pivoting, they are targeting companies, targeting people, and making the case as to why they are a good fit. You have a much better chance of convincing a human that's hiring versus someone who's paid to find the best match. That being said, what I do with the resume is number one, I want to make sure that I weave in industry lingo that's appropriate. Everyone's lingo is a little different. How you talk in the nonprofit is very different than the way you speak commercially, for instance. I will look at job postings to identify the lingo. I'll go to YouTube sites and read about things. ChatGPT, you could say, write me a job description for this role. You can see the lingo. So I make sure to translate my achievements using that lingo. The other thing that I do is I will make sure that my bullets are, and this goes really across the board, but it really is very impactful with career pivots. I make sure that the resume is very accomplishment driven. So I will lead off with the results, whether I saved money, fixed a hot mess, built something from the ground up. And then I'll lead off with the result, talk about what I did. And so then what you're doing is connecting the dots for the reader who might say, well, this isn't that industry, but I need this thing done. I need this problem fixed. I need this team built. I need those sales revenues done. So you're sort of translating how what you did is relevant to this new arena. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. There's a question right now about how do you handle a lot of contract or temp roles? How do you handle those on the resume?
So it again, it very much depends, but what I often will do, there's a couple ways that you can do it. If the contract engagements were sort of similar, you sort of, rinse and repeat, what I will do is I will list them under a contract umbrella, and I'll say, whatever, I'm just like IT project manager. And then I will list some of the agencies that I work for, and then I will have some bullets that say, these are the kinds of engagements I was brought in on. These were the kinds of messes I was brought in to fix, or problems I was brought in to solve. And then for my bullets, I will list different case studies. So I will say, if I was an IT project manager at Bank of America, here's what I did. At Wells Fargo, here's what I did. And you're not really going into your responsibilities. You're talking about the solution that you implemented or the problem that you solved. So that's one option. The other thing you can do, I just did this for someone who was an SAP consultant, and they did data migrations, like 50 of them. I said, which one of these do you most want to share? And we literally created job experiences under this big umbrella of SAP data migration consultant. And I said, when she did this for Florida Power and Light, when she did this for Pepco, for these different utility companies, I said this was the problem that she solved. These were the tools, the tools and the technologies that I used. So I highlighted what was sort of unique about each of those engagements. But what informed how I wrote it, or what I included in that, was the job postings. For her, those job postings, they really wanted to know that you understood all the technologies that you had to use, and you had to explain what version of SAP you were using. So I highlighted that.
Do you like to use a separate section for technological skills, so it's highlighted?
So if you are targeting a tech role, I do. If you're a CIO, you probably don't need that. But if you're in that middle level, or you're in a role, again, that's super techy, I do. But I use the job postings to navigate that. If you see, I'm not talking about Microsoft Office, because everyone sort of expects that you know that, but if there's certain softwares that are really critical to your role, I do recommend you include them. I only include them at the top if you're a super techie and it's targeting a super techie role. If it's the rest of us, I might include it at the bottom.
Just trying to see, what mindset do you recommend to hold?
A lot of times for technology people, I'll do a tech snapshot, and I'll include, like, here are the certifications Here are the, here are like some program management tools. Here's some programming tools, and I'll sort of group them into subcategories to help the reader identify it. And what that snapshot does is it allows you to add or remove ones that aren't relevant anymore, or that kind of thing.
So this is great. We have a question from Paul. Is the one-page rule still a thing in resumes?
It was really never a thing that I know of. I cannot remember who the study was, but I was just talking about it at a conference last week. They they surveyed a bunch of hiring managers and said, what do you prefer? They all said one page. And then they said, let's look at who you hired. What percentage of those have 1 or 2 pages? The overwhelming majority of who they hired were 2-pagers. So people think they want one thing, but they're hiring off of another. The only time that I will have a 1-pager is if the person has less than 5-ish years of experience, or if they've been doing this sort of the same job their entire lives, and I can sort of pick some highlights and explain the job at the top. Other than that, 2 pages is perfectly acceptable.
Okay, and just to add on to that, but 5 pages is not acceptable. We need to get it down.
So there's no hard and fast rules. I don't love to go past 2 pages. I have gone on to 3 on occasions because I know that I'm dealing with skim online readers, and I know that when I open a document and see that it's 5 pages, I glaze over and say, oh, that's too hard to read. And I know people that are even more ADD than I am. So I know that that's what I'm dealing with. For some reason, 2 pages doesn't trigger that response. What I do to try to keep it to 2 pages where applicable is I will focus primarily on the last 15 years, if that experience aligns with your target. I will pick and choose earlier experience that is relevant to your target, and I'll put it under an earlier experience section where I synopsize the pieces that are relevant to the job target, and I remove the dates from them. And then I'll use 1/2 inch margins. I will use sans serif fonts that are a little smaller. Arial's a good one. Calibri is another one. And then I have a YouTube video, I can find it, but there's some ways you can play with formatting to condense your spacing to like 0.9, 0.88, and then where you can squish your words together a little bit more, as much as 0.45, and that does miracles for getting like a 2.5-page resume to 2. I'll find the video, Mindy, and I'll share it with you.
Let's see. Didn't miss any of those.
Where I will use a 3rd page though is if there's, like, some people have addendums. Like, let's say they are, I don't know, like an M&A attorney, and they've got a bunch of deals that they need to show, or they've been they're targeting a science role and they've got 1 million patents. I might include a section with that kind of stuff.
Also in the educational field, sometimes they are published and they want to list a lot of their published publications. And I've done a couple of those also. Where
and education, a lot of times you're dealing with academia, that's a CV. And so then with CV, the rules are totally different than what a resume is. More of a marketing document. A CV is everything you've done in the kitchen sink, and 5-6 page resumes are the norm. I don't really write those.
All right, I got that one. Oh, wow. Okay. So Sarah is asking, what do you suggest at the top of the resume? A summary, an objective, a personal branding statement? What do you like to see at the top of a resume?
I like to see a paragraph that weaves in strengths and traits of yours with things that you found in the job posting, in the bottom part of the job posting, where you've seen job postings where it'll start off with, this is what's amazing about our company, and then this is what the role is going to be about, and then there's a section that says this is what you have to have, and it's an added plus if you have this, and then they go into their benefits. That section of what you have to have, those are deal breakers, and so you need to weave I want to see a paragraph that weaves that information in. I'm not an advocate of those paragraphs where people are described with really flowery adjectives. What's happened is so many people overuse those same adjectives that they've lost a lot of their value, and people tend to skip over them. But I do like to replace adjectives with a couple of nuggets of information that are specific to your career. I'm not talking about saying you have 15 years of experience. That's not a differentiator, but it might be company names. It might be some revenue figures, it depends on your story. But what you want is for the reader to read the headline and the paragraph, just like they do when they're skimming the news, to walk away with a clear idea of what you're targeting, why it makes sense that you're a good fit. And then they also know one or two things about you that will really differentiate you.
I love that. That's the key, right? To differentiate yourself from the rest of the people who are applying for this, because
Right.
so many people are applying.
It's a tall order to write, because you don't want to make it too long. I might do 3 lines and 3 little bullets. Sometimes I'll pull a cool quote if someone has a really good recommendation or something like that, or a review. I'll pull something, but depends on the person.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I'll go to 4 lines sometimes, I won't go more than 4 though. Someone posted their resume for you, but I don't think we're going to look at that. It's way too tiny. We got that question.
The one thing that I want to say, that if you want to do nothing else to your resume, make it easy to read for an online skim reader. For me, that means avoiding dense text. We have a really hard time skimming text that's really thick, really fat, and that's scrunched together. So I make sure that my bullets have a little bit of space in between them. I try to keep my bullets to 2 to 3 lines. I recognize that people jump around a bunch, so I will front load whatever I'm writing, which means I put the good stuff at the beginning, knowing the reader might never get to the end. And I always lead off with the first bullet that the reader sees is always what is most impactful. Run it by your phone. If you can't get the salient points quickly scrolling with your thumb, you need to go back to the drawing board, because you need to count on that reader having also opened it up on some sort of a device. And luckily, everything you write for screens prints out fine.
Exactly. I'm looking at Valerie's question. I'm trying to understand. The question is, what is an appropriate resume for someone who worked for a company over 10 years and someone who is experience rich, 50 plus? What to focus on?
So that person is 10 years and they're 50 years old. Is that what he's saying? She's saying?
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want to chime in, Valerie? You want to say, you want to
Yeah.
explain?
I kind of feel like working for one place for so long kind of goes against me, but I liked what I did, and I worked there because I moved up, and I was also able to like work full time and raise my family. So I don't know, like I feel like that might be against me, and also being over 50. So I didn't know if there's like a certain resume for that type of person.
That's a great question. I'm 55. I totally get it.
Oh, we're the same age.
I know, turn in January. So what you said is that you've moved up. And so that the way you overcome the bias of someone reading it saying, oh, well, she's reluctant to change and adapt because she's been at the same place. Number one, I would walk the reader through. This is why I was promoted to this role. This is why I took that role. If someone recruited you into it, if the role was created for you, spell that out in each role. And then you speak to your before and after story. What did things look like when you got there? What do they look like now? And put some context, put some numbers around it. Show your successes in each role. And then the reader will not think you've been doing the same thing. It's clear that you stuck around because there were opportunities. The other thing I will do is you want to appeal to those people where loyalty matters. It does matter to some people, not to all, but you can sort of balance both by saying that you, reference something like that in your about section about loyalty. Reference in your summary section how you, something about how you had progressive career. I don't know. I'd have to think of a sentence. Now I'm having a mind blank. I might ask ChatGPT, but do something that sort of shows that you are loyal that, oh, I know, you could say that you've been with a company, you support companies during ups and downs, because I'm sure you saw the, the recession, the great resignation, the whiplash of COVID. And so saying a little sentence like that speaks to those people.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Virginia. There's a question about bolding a skill. What do you think about bolding a skill in the resume to make it stand out?
I try to use bold sparingly because it can sometimes too much bold like triggers an emotional response for people. I think it would be more effective to bold the achievement. So grew revenues 47% is probably more impactful than grew revenues 47% using Salesforce, where Salesforce is the keyword. I think the achievement would be better off served as bold if you're going to use bold at all.
So how would you do that in a bullet? What part of that would be bold?
You might write the bullet, you lead off with the result, and then you sort of say, I grew revenues 30% by creating a targeted strategy to turn around a neglected territory. I would bold the grew 47% piece.
Mhm.
I don't always bold though. Again, I hate to say this, it depends. I try to use bold sparingly because I want it to count.
Yeah. Too much of anything is never a good thing.
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll write a bullet and I'll create a little subject header. So I might say, and the subject header might be a keyword. So for sales, Salesforce might be a keyword, which is the customer relationship management software that people use. So I might say, the bullet might say Salesforce, and then I'll say, got CTO buy-in to implement it, or use this software in a new way, and did this. So that way the keyword would be bolded, but then you're leading off with the achievement, then the achievement follows.
Perfect. We had a question about childcare. What are you doing as a gap? What are you doing with those gaps?
So if the gap was, 10, 15 years ago, it doesn't matter because you're not including that sort of stuff. If there's anything that you did in addition to, drowning in diapers, as I like to call that period. So for instance, when I took years off with my little kids, I was doing a ton of stuff for free. I was writing press releases for people. I was writing newsletters for my elementary school, like a whole host of stuff. And so I referenced that on my resume. If you don't have that and you need to, and it's a large gap that can't be camouflaged by, say, removing months from your date. So let's say you took off from 2015 to 2016. There's a year of a gap, but if you remove the month, suddenly it doesn't really feel like a gap. If you can't do any of that, then I recommend you just call it out, say, use this time, taking care of 3 kids or whatever it is, and just a brief statement and then move on. Same if you had to take some time off for elder care. I wrote the SAP lady I wrote for yesterday. She took 2 years off to focus on her health. And so we just said, focus on health and well-being, connecting with friends and family. She did it from 2018 to 2020, and then she's got a new job, and that's what we reference. She took the new job in 2021.
Let's see.
There was someone I worked with last year during the pandemic who was switching from Fortune 500. She wanted to go into nonprofit work. And so we called it a voluntary sabbatical. And I talked about how she used that time to research and really get career clarity around what she really wanted to do and her passion. And so that's how we called it out on her resume and her LinkedIn.
So is there an issue with just you'd mentioned not adding the months in certain situations. Do you have?
So with executive resumes, I don't love to use the months because to me, they're busy. I hate to keep saying it depends, but I will use months and years when it helps to show that maybe someone stayed longer. Like if someone has 3 jobs that were 18 months long, if you don't put the months, it looks like they might be a job hopper. So then I'll include the months. But if it was, 3 to 5 years in each role, then I like to remove the months. For newbies, like people that are, are just in the workforce, I tend to use more months, but I don't write as many of those anymore.
Right.
Do you have different thoughts on that, Mindy?
I generally will put a month if I can. Some people, there's lots of reasons why you might not want to put a month, but I know the question is always, is that going to force the applicant tracking system to put a 1 in front of it and say everything is January? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
my thing with, I try to write for the human and worry about ATS later. ATS is a filing system, really nothing more, nothing less. There are humans behind them. Long as you are meeting the qualifications in that must-have section, I don't see you getting knocked out for anything. It might slightly misread the number of months, but it's still going to count your experience. The person at the other end who's going to be typing in search words to look at specific resumes, if they're not looking at every resume along the way, they're going to see your stuff.
exactly. See what else?
And I've been fortunate. I do get to speak with lots of recruiters. I've interviewed many with my on my podcast, and everything that they're telling me is that they are reading these resumes. The ATS is their trusted filing system. You won't get booted out of ATS unless unless they set the setting to they'll create a knockout question which says, like, let's say you have to have a certain certification. If you don't have it, you're going to get instantly declined. But other than that, you're not going to get spit out of the system or anything like that.
I've had a lot of people recently requesting to eliminate their city and state because they're looking for remote roles and they don't want to be knocked out because they live in a certain state. How do you feel about that?
So what I do, I've also, everyone has opinions. So what I do is try to base my advice on what the majority says. There's enough consensus around that sometimes it can hurt you more than it can help you to include your city and state. So what I will do is I will say, for me, Charlotte, North Carolina, but then I will put remote since 2019 in the, like, right after the city state zip on the contact information. And then I will make sure that if I worked remote, I'll put the company name, job title, and then I'll say remote. I'll say remote hybrid, or I'll use language like that. And I will make sure to highlight in the documents that I worked with teams that were all over the place, that I'm comfortable working across time zones. I'll talk about how if I led my teams to pivot in COVID from on premise to off, I talk about that. So everything sort of supports it.
That sounds good. Let's see what else I have in here. I think we have time for maybe one short question.
Mindy?
Yes. Was that Norma?
Yeah, I put it in, but I must ask this before I realize it's resume. Could I ask my question?
Sure. Norma.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, because this is very frustrating. I did work for certified registered nurse anesthetist, and I'm a contractor. And then, and that is in there, yet when they talk about searches, so I get a lot of calls and emails for being a nurse. Why is that?
A nurse versus someone who supports nurse anesthetists?
Correct.
Okay. That's because people are lazy with their searches. They type in certain words, your stuff is coming up for those searches. And that's because that's a field, there's a huge shortage of nurses, everyone's looking. So they just type in those keywords, you're popping up. The problem with your role is you don't want, if you remove the words that help them find those roles, you're going to eliminate yourself from other searches as well.
Right. Right.
But
But
what I would recommend is sort of reverse engineering and maybe identifying some contract companies, some healthcare systems that you'd like to work with, sort of figure out who you might know in those organizations or people that you'd like to know, and see what you can do to turn an online connection into a phone call or an offline conversation. And that way, when a position comes up, or after you've applied to a role, the person on the other end can say, hey, they're on the other end looking for your document. They can help shepherd it. They can, tell the decision maker, be sure to look for this person. And I call it like the Disney World Fast Pass, to really try to get your documents front and center in front of people that are making decisions.
okay,
But that won't help
thank you.
you impact how often you show up in search.
Okay, thank you. I thought they were lazy, but I wanted to hear it confirmed.
That is just, I'm just gonna go to view. I want to see everyone here. Perfect. Norma, you bring up a point of the job search is not always fair, right? Recruiters have a job to do. They're looking for the fastest person who can come in that's qualified for the job, because that's how they get paid. So it's not always fair, and it's up to us to make sure that we work around to get to the hiring managers, get to those recruiters who are really going to hire us, and get to understand who we are and what value we can provide. Virginia, this has been amazing. I thank you so much. You are wonderful for sharing all this information. I thank you to all of the participants who asked great and wonderful questions. I apologize if we did not get to everyone, but this was just fabulous. Virginia, you're welcome back anytime. You
Thank
are
you
a
so
wealth
much
of
for the
information.
questions. I appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone. Wishing you a great day. This was recorded for anyone who came in late, and it will be on YouTube in a day or so. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in May. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.